I just got really into my research last night and started throwing information at people.
I can see that.
Don't let me research too many things.
Hey everybody, welcome to Seriously Lighthearted Yoga. Today we're going to be talking about the Yoga Sutras as kind of a whole works, whole conglomerate of their ideas and what that means for your and everybody's yoga practice. What does it mean as a whole? What is the broader encompassing aspect of the sutra?
This thing we keep mentioning, the Yoga Sutras, written by Patanjali at some point in the past. There's a lot of contention on the date. Yeah, it goes anywhere from like 1500 BCE to like 200 AD. But he wrote this kind of text on yoga, and really all it is a compilation of all the practices that were already in effect in the yoga world, in the culture of India. These things were already very well known to most people, and he kind of just wrote them all down in a very organized, codified manner and gave some commentary on all of the practices for people. But breaking them down a little more, he wrote 196 different aphorisms into these Yoga Sutras, and these aphorisms are just little tiny phrases that were originally meant to be memorized. It was an oral tradition for a very long time, so they're orally spoken in Sanskrit and memorized by the people listening to the one teaching. And then he kind of separated these aphorisms into 4 different books or chapters or categories or however you want to think of it, but they're separated into 4 different groups, and those 4 different groups are beginning one with the Samadhi Pada. So the first of these aphorisms talks about Samadhi and what that is. So we've talked about it already before. Samadhi being sama and ti, which is equal intellect, kind of that bliss to no end, as we've mentioned it, unity with everything. And he talks about how this is a technique to delve into your own mind. And then the second pada or chapter is known as the sadhana pada, and it's seen as like the practices of yoga. And Patanjali lays out a lot of yogic practices and breaks them down into sort of Kriya Yoga and then also into what we think of as Ashtanga Yoga. And those are kind of the 2 different forms or paths that he brings in this idea of yoga. Again, yoga, very broad term, many, many different ways to practice. He's only giving us some of them. Then there's the Vibhuti Pada, which is kind of seen as like the powers of yoga. So like there's a chapter on powers, literally like supra-normal powers that you can attain by practicing yoga very well. And these are things like you can become as big or as small as you'd like, you can fly, you can take over, like go into someone else's mind, you can take over someone else's body. Like these are powers. We think of them as superpowers. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, they all pretty much assumed they were real. There was no rejection of that. And after that pada, there's the 4th pada, which is the Kaivalya pada, which is talks about liberation, moksha. We've kind of been talking about it as samadhi at this point, but moksha is another word for liberation, and it's seen as almost like an emancipation from your separateness. And he details this and what you might experience as like a liberated being, and that's what the 4th pada is. So if you guys are curious, there are a bunch of different translations, like maybe hundreds of translations of the Yoga Sutras out there. Mm-hmm. Go on Google, look at some reviews, see which one you think would work best for you, and order one up to read it if you're curious. So
yeah, absolutely. It's your yoga practice. Again, we can't stress that enough. So find what works for you and find what you like. This is kind of the Yoga Sutras as a whole and what it kind of means in a general sort of sense. Remember that there's like 4 different chapters, 4 different groups, 4 different chunks, and other than that, hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let us know. Give somebody a high five.
Woohoo!
And we'll see you guys tomorrow.